Research interests include peer interaction, corrective feedback, and it seems like the general field of English language teaching. Mr. Shimada obtained a teaching license in English for secondary education, and today in his presentation he's going to talk about the usefulness of corrective field training for second language learners. Now please welcome Mr. Shimada.
Hey. Hey. Hello, I'm Shonosuke Shimada, and a theme of my study is explicitly conducted training for second language learners to utilize corrective feedback. And so here is the outline, and I am going to explain about previous studies first, and I'm going to talk about the current study. So first of all, what I need to make sure that you all understand what is the feedback. And according to the Lister and Ranta, corrective feedback is an instructional reaction towards learners' language errors. So for example, if you are a teacher and then when your student has a problem in their oral production, and I am sure that you give some kind of correction that makes the error or that makes students' production better. So this is an example of CF. And there are main two types of CF techniques. So first of all is recast. So recasts are defined as a reformulation of student patterns that instructors give to them. So here's the example. A student says he plays tennis every day. And the teacher says, oh, he plays tennis every day. Then the student responded like, yes, he plays tennis. So this is, in this conversation, the student made an error, play, but teacher noticed the error and corrected the error by giving the corrected sentence. And the other CF technique is prompt, and it includes 4 techniques as well: clarification requests, repetition, metalinguistic clues, and elicitation. So take a look example. I like to reading. What did you say? I like reading. So in this conversation, teacher gave a correction by asking a clarification towards the student to make the student notice the error. So many researchers have reviewed the general benefit of CF in a large range of L2 learning development, such as grammatical forms, pronunciation, and pragmatic awareness. And so there is another CF technique, is called peer corrective feedback, goes by PCF. And the benefit of PCF has also revealed as well. And CF provides more opportunities to learn by being both a CF provider and receiver. And it enhances learners' language awareness as well. And in PCF, learners' mindset and relationship between classmates are very important factors. So the best learning environment for learners will be collaborative and building a collaborative relationship between learners. So moreover, without trust and respect in one another, PCF may occur conflict between learners. Thus, they lose their learning opportunities. Stolch introduced 2 interactional patterns when learners are more likely to help each other or their partner, collaborative and expert novice. And although being collaborative is important in peer interaction, but some study argued that when PCF treatment is adopted, they may feel awkward to point out their language errors, or they may feel PCF is less helpful than teacher CF. Moreover, they even see themselves incompetent when they make some grammatical errors. So however, learner will benefit from when they overcome those social hurdles. And so teacher is really important role to let students overcome those social hurdles. So how should they help students to deal with such social barriers? First, teachers have to make efforts to design classroom environment to be collaborative, and they should know students wish for being corrected by teachers than what they want to provide CF. So while studies on these two types of CF had been conducted, CF training showed a different approach to the CF study. So CF training is an activity to teach students how to provide CF to their classmates. Then they become able to do so. Therefore, they could have more chances to learn by providing and receiving CF. Just a few studies were conducted to assess the effects of CF training. So one major study was conducted by Sato and Lister in 2012. Students were grouped into peer interaction recast, PI prompt, PI only, and the control group. And only students in PI recast and PI prompt had a CF training. And the results show that the training contributed accuracy development than fluency development. Additionally, students who had CF training produced more CF than the PI only and the control group. Another study was taken place by Sipler and Jackson, and the study compared the effects of teacher CF and peer CF. So during the intervention, students in the teacher feedback group were given CF by teachers, while those in the PCF group were taught how to provide CF each other. And the results show that both CF helped learner acquire grammatical knowledge. Interestingly, PCF had a greater impact than teacher CF. So according to these previous studies, the training could increase students' learning opportunities by utilizing CF, and the teaching CF improves learners' language awareness. And both CF providers and receivers learn by detecting or monitoring their utterances. And the current study is aiming at clarifying the effects of explicit CF training. And 4 research questions were formulated. So one, does explicit CF training to students increase the number of CF? What are the different types of CF, and to what extent was it provided by L2 learners who had CF training during peer interaction? And 3, does explicit CF training reduce learners' grammatical errors? And the last question is, can learners who had CF training produce CF and repair the output correctly? So 23 students were participated in this study, and they were grouped into the experimental group and the control group based on their TOEIC score. And importantly, each pair was made sure to be a high-low proficiency diet. Like this, each pair has a high and low learners. And this is the outline of the experiment. Both groups had a pretest and post-test, but only the experimental group had a CF training and exit questionnaire. In both pretests and post-tests, a speaker was asked to make an original story based on a picture, just like this. And while listening, a listener was asked to give advice and suggestion that makes the story better. And both tests were conducted in turn. And at the end of the post-test, exit questionnaire was implemented. But in the current study, the questionnaire was not analyzed because the study mainly focused on the effects to assess the effects of CF training. So classroom intervention was designed based on Sato and Lister's study, and then the modeling stage and practice stage were implemented. In the modeling stage, students took a lecture given by the author and saw a short role play video. So this stage was conducted to make sure students understand the idea of CF and CF moves. So this is the video that they watched in the modeling stage. So by watching those kind of video, the students were expected to understand the idea of CF. So in the next stage, 3 tasks were provided to experimental group to train how to provide CF. So 2 participants in the pair played a role as either speaker or listener in turn. While the speaker was asked to read aloud a script written, the story written in the script to the listener was asked to detect errors and tried to provide CF explicitly. In task 2, each of them was asked to make an original story with a given picture, like this, and tell the story to their partner. While speaking, the speakers were told to include errors intentionally so that they can detect errors and try to provide CF. So the last task was very simple. They were simply had a conversation about a given topic with their partner for 3 minutes, as they usually did. However, participants were told that when they detected problematic utterances, they had to give a CF to their partner. So to analyze the result, all of participants' utterances were audio recorded. One instance of CF appeared in both tests was counted as 1 point. So table 1 illustrates the number of CF provided by students. An improvement in CF production occurred in the EX group, increased the mean score from 0 to 1.82. However, no clear difference was detected between the pre-test and the post-test in the CO group. So table 2 depicts the type of CF and its distribution provided by the students. Most favored CF technique was recasts, even the students were taught how to provide prompts, not recasts. The second most frequently used CF was repetition. Table 3 shows the number of errors provided by students. Based on the table, differences in the number of errors seldom occurred, even though participants in the both EX and CO group decreased the number of errors, except for the high proficiency learners in the EX group. Table 4 describes the number of repaired output. The majority of CF provided appropriately and let repair. High proficient learners in the EX group produced more repaired uptake, whereas those who were the low proficiency produced less repaired uptake, with the mean score of 1.16 in the low proficiency and 1.80 in the high proficiency learners. So moving on to the discussion. So students successfully provided CF after CF training. The results is actually equivalent to the previous study, which showed that students in the EX group produced more CF than the who are in the CO group. Interestingly, they were only told to give advice and suggestion at both pretest and posttest. At the pretest, they basically gave a positive comments or questions such as, I think that was a good story. However, they gave CF at the posttest. This might be because they perceived the CF as an effective or feasible tool or advice or suggestion. I think the important factor here is the relationship between learners. Actually, they have spent 3 years together at university, and each pair consisted of low and high proficiency learners. So this kind of relationship applied to Stoch's previous study. And to answer the second research question, the frequency of CF use was differently shown. Requests were the most frequently used feedback by the students, even they had been taught how to provide prompts, not requests. This might be because the learners in the EX group were relatively high proficient in English. Therefore, they were able to guess what their partner wanted to say during the interaction, and successfully gave requests there to their partner. Also, repetition was revealed that it was the second most preferred CF technique. This might be because it was the easiest CF out of taught techniques, because learners only gave a repetition by adjusting their intonation. And it is important to discuss whether CF training improved learners' accuracy, as previous study found. Opposing to the study, analysis revealed that the CF training did not give a positive impact on learners' accuracy development in both groups. Only high proficiency learners in the EX group produced more errors than any other group. And it could be inferred that the CF training would bring more benefits to low efficiency learners than high proficiency learners. The last research question asked whether students who had CF training produce CF and uptake successfully. Majority of uptake were properly occurred. However, some students failed to provide and receive CF correctly. Please look at some examples here. And for example, in the conversation between A and B, A was a CF receiver and A spoke a correct English. However, B, who were a CF provider, tried to emphasize the subject in this sentence with adding she has, which included tense error and missing the article the. Consequently, student A noticed both CF providers' intended correction, and his error in tense and produced repaired utterances. In these cases, students could not give or respond to CF appropriately. This might be because they did not get used to reach out their grammatical knowledge in spontaneous oral production. And the CF was a novel technique for them in the process of L2 learning. So they could not utilize CF technique as they were expected to do so. So in addition to the result of the current study, PCF can make a positive effect on classroom environment. So CF training in this study was successfully employed, and it has a possibility to improve learners' accuracy by detecting and monitoring classmates' errors. Therefore, this training could be applied at classroom lessons. However, PCF is related to a relationship between learners. So teachers need to build a collaborative classroom environment and control themselves not to over-monitor PI so that they can see students' effort. In PCF, teachers play an important role to make PCF effective. So they have to be careful how they intervene PI. In conclusion, CF training increased the number of CF students provided, and recasts and repetition might be easier for learners provide. And the current study did not show the same results as previous studies found. CF led a great amount of repair, while some of learners struggled with producing proper CF moves. But in this study, there are some limitations. And the first one is the sample size was quite small, making it difficult to analyze the result. And the result might be different depending on the sample size. And another limitation is the duration of treatment. In the current study, students only had 30 minutes to train CF trains to provide CF. So longer treatment would result in different findings. And future studies need to be addressed by providing long-term lessons, and experiments of CF training have to be implemented in the classroom setting to evaluate whether students with high school level of English can provide CF appropriately. So lastly, researches on CF training are scarce, so more researches need to be done. So here's the references. Thank you for your warm attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shimada. So yeah, this is for the thesis project. So question times are scheduled for 5 minutes, but if the member would like to respond, you need to add a comment. So I think the question session will be longer. Okay. So for audience, if you have a question or to give comment to him, so be active to this and unmute mic I need to say. And Mr. Shimada, could you stop the share screen? Thank you.
It seems like Mr. Scott has some questions. He raised his hand on the video.
Sorry, I didn't know that. Okay. So Scott.
Hello. Interesting presentation. Is it possible, could you take us back to the results for research question 4? Yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting. Do you have an idea of like how often these kind of problems happened and what was the result of them?
I guess in my experience, this type of errors were less occurred than I expected. Like I thought they might have more influence to other students providing CF, like their CF effects to their partner more, but it actually happens several times, just like those, I guess like 4 instances will occur.
Okay, 4 instances out of how many total, sorry?
Total of maybe 40. Sorry, I forgot the total number, but it was
maybe
like
10%.
Yeah, like less than 10%.
Less than 10%. Oh, interesting. Do you think, like, so the students who received the, let's say the bad feedback, what do you know what they did with that? Like, did they accept the bad feedback or did they challenge it, or?
They, for example, they once accept the feedback, but I think so that he or she noticed so the given feedback was wrong, and they try to repair those wrong given corrective feedback by themselves. So I think this process is very important because they both provider and receiver have to notice others given feedback and their own utterances. So those monitoring is very important factor, and they surely learn from those monitoring. So
Mm,
I think that's the point of like safe training.
right. Yeah. Do you feel like, so less than 10%, right? So do you feel like it's a problem, or do you feel like maybe we don't need to worry about it really?
I think we don't have to like we don't have to pay attention so much because I think it's something normally occur. Like when do CF training on students, they don't know how to provide CF or how to receive CF. And but like the more CF training they have, the more impact they have as well. So in the process of CF training, they notice like how to provide CF or receive CF appropriately. So I think we don't need to care about it so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Naoya, could you ask him?
Well, maybe some of you kind of think I'm being like statistic geek again, but I'm just wondering if you have some reasons why you didn't conduct any influential statistical testing, because it seemed like you only showed the descriptive statistic result.
Yeah, actually, I've conducted parametric statistic and non-parametric statistic. It doesn't show like result. I mean, the sample, as I said, sample size is quite small. Like only 23 students is not enough to like conduct statistical.
So no statistical difference was detected. Okay.
Yeah.
Which influential statistical testing did you use, like ANOVA or?
I've used ANOVA, but it doesn't seem good like statistic.
Okay. And I'm just also wondering if you had some target grammar points to explore in this investigation, because I'm not expert on second language speaking. My research interest is second language writing, so I'm not really sure about the effectiveness of corrective feedback in speaking setting. But in my opinion, because like recast could be kind of indirect way of corrective feedback, and it would be rather challenging for students to provide the accurate or appropriate corrective feedback unless they know some specific or target grammar points.
So in this study, I didn't clearly mention the target form, but I prepared like those kind of picture, and in this story they have to talk about the past. So they should. I was expecting that they will. Yeah, they were supposed to talk like past tense, and so as I expected, like those errors were basically in the past tense or articles. So that was something I was expecting. So yeah, I think it becomes more clear if I like decide which target forms should be target for safe training. But, yeah.
Okay, and
it wasn't so clear.
Okay, and this will be my last question. So sorry for asking 3 questions, but for teacher development, so obviously not only students but also teachers also need some training to provide corrective feedback. How do you think they can receive such training? Or so how do you think they can raise their awareness of the importance of corrective feedback, or how do you think they can learn how to provide appropriate corrective feedback?
I think for teachers, first of all, they need to know what corrective feedback is, obviously. And like for example, in a high school or junior high school environment, I guess it's almost impossible to give corrective feedback to each student because the classroom consists like 40 students. When it comes to like university classroom, it's much easier for them to provide feedbacks. And I think, as I said, so one previous study showed that students want to be corrected by teachers, then teachers think. So I think they also need to know how much students want to be corrected. And like corrective feedback is not so much difficult for like higher proficiency English learners or like native English speakers. So I think if once they know how to provide CF, I think it's not a big problem for them to provide them.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naoya. And any other comment? Okay, so I guess Noah has a question. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Shimada. So I'd like to make the 5 minutes break. I'm sorry, I really wanted to go to the bathroom, so I'm sorry. Okay, so